are you doing? Woohoo! Let's see who has the most participants. Grade 6, let's hear you. Yeah. Wow. Okay, and some honorary grade 6s. Grade 7, where are you? Nice, nice. Grade 8? What? Wait. Let's try that again. Grade 8? Okay. That's good. But good comeback effort. So, what time is it? We have a few minutes. We'll let our last minute people filter in, but thank you for coming today. We have a very special program for you. And we're going to start off with some theater. Some theater from your fellow students. And I'm going to let I'm going to give it another minute, right? Let's give it one more minute, and then Miss Vandana will introduce the theater piece, and then we'll introduce Miss Paro Anand. Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, hi guys, can you hear me? Okay, time to listen. So we've got 3 performances this afternoon. The first performance is going to be started by the grade 10 students who have been working on a specific type of theatre for their upcoming e-portfolio. This is a physical theatre based on a scene from Haroon. Do you want me to say which scene it is, Addy? Okay, so this scene is it's the part in the book where there's a conversation, an internal dialogue going on between the warrior and his alter ego. Yeah, this has been choreographed and coordinated by these students, and they've worked really hard for the last week on it. So sit back, enjoy. After this, there will be 2 short performances by the grade 8s. Again, they will introduce those scenes as and when. But for now, let's start off with the grade 10s. Thank you very much.
think so. Yeah.
Just check your mics.
Hello. Oh.
Okay, so the next performance is by the grade 8. I'm going to let Mona introduce this. They've been working on this unit since last semester, and it's all about genre. So, Mona, do you want to introduce?
So basically, this performance we've been working on since, like Miss said, last semester, and maybe you guys can try and guess what our genre is. So basically, this scene is we're trying to like show the scene where Rashid Khalifa loses his ability to tell stories when he's in that political party. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
Haroon, look around. The Valley of K and the town of G. I just know that this is going to be the best trip for us. This opportunity, I'm just so excited. And ever since your mom left, it's been really difficult. But I just know that this will make up for it. Haroon? Haroon?
He doesn't get it. He doesn't get the point. It's not how things work. My mom left us because of his stupid stories. Until he understands that his stories are useless and pointless, I will not talk with him.
Haroon?
Huh?
Are you listening?
Yeah, I'm listening totally.
The stories, I'm so excited. I'm finally able to showcase everything I've learned, everything I've spent my whole life doing. I really can't wait.
What is the point of your stories? Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, today I present to you the one and only Rashid Khalifa, who's going to be filling your minds with stories. I think I'll let him do the talking. He seems to be a pro at it.
Hello, everyone. I'm so privileged to be standing here today and showcasing one of my favorite stories that I've written, that I've worked on for a really long time, and it's called, I don't know what's happening. I've been working on this story my entire life, and now the one moment I have to showcase my talent, everything I've worked so hard for, I'm not able to. I don't know what to do. And ever since my wife left me, it's been really difficult. And basically living on my own, I thought that this was the one chance I had to make up for everything. And now I've ruined it. Maybe it really was bad. What is the point of my stories anyway?
We're going to be performing a scene from the book Haroon. The scene that we're going to be performing is when Rashid enters the land of Kahani and is telling the guppies about what happened at the Twilight Strip. Anjali is going to be performing as Haroon. Arjuna is
Rashid.
Lucy is
Prince Bolo.
But who or what is Bezabad? You may all know, but I have...
Bezabad is a ginormous, Some would even say Colossus, statue of ice, placed at the citadel of Chup, the home of Kadamshur.
I wish I hadn't asked.
While I was at the twilight strip, I saw what I believed to be a ginormous boat made of gold and silver represented a swan. And on it, I saw what I believed to be butt cheek.
What's that you say? Why have you not told us before? Zounds! Proceed, for pity's sake, proceed.
The reason why I believe her to be butt cheek is her hair. No, God, the most disgusting voice I've ever heard.
You needn't go on. That was Bachith, all right? Bachith, oh Bachith, when will I ever hear your sweet, sweet voice or gaze upon your delicate face again?
Thank you so much to our drama students and to Ms. Vandana for making these short scenes from Haroon possible. Thank you. It takes a lot of courage to get up in front of you guys. Did you know that? So good for you guys. Good for the actors. Good for everyone. So thanks again for being here. If you've come since we did our initial introduction, I want to welcome you. This is part of One Book Woodstock. So you may have heard the name or seen the name on the same page. Has anybody heard that phrase or that name? Seen it? Yeah? It's sort of a collaboration between CFI, the library, some of the languages, and it's just a group of people who think literature is really important and we want to bring it to the school. So One Book Woodstock is part of that. And as part of One Book Woodstock, you guys read a book. What was that book? Oh, very nice, very nice. So Haroon and the Sea of Stories was written by Salman Rushdie, right? And we have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Miss Paro Anand, and she is going to be joining us to talk about Haroon and the Sea of Stories and also some of her own works. She is an author and has won many different awards, been a part of many different organizations. I'm going to ask our CFI interns first to come up and read to you her biography.
Paro Anand is a Sahitya Academy Bal Sahitya Award winner for her book Wild Child, now published as Like Smoke. She has written books for children, young adults, and adults. She is well known for her work with children in difficult circumstances, including those impacted by violence in Kashmir. Through her writing, as well as her program, Literature in Action, she holds a world record for helping over 3,000 children make the world's longest newspaper.
Ms. Anand was invited to speak at the Harvard India Conference, USA, of Disruptive Innovation in Literature for Young Adults and Children, and has been awarded for her contribution to the children's literature by the Russian Center for Science and Culture. No Guns at My Son's Funeral, which opened to rave reviews, was International Board on Books for Young People honor list and has been translated into German and French. She has helped the National Center for Children's Literature. The Little Bird Who Held Up the Sky with His Feet was on the 1001 Books to Read Before You Grow Up, an international gold standard of the world's best books. Her book, Wingless, A Fairly Weird Fairy Tale, has been performed nationally and internationally. She has co-authored a graphic novel with a Swedish writer, Orhan Persson.
As a performer, storyteller, and a speaker, she has represented India in the US, UK, Sweden, Switzerland, Singapore, Germany, and Bangladesh, as well as across India. In 2019, she was awarded the Kalinga Kurubaki Literary Award for Fearless Women Writers.
Thank you. Without further ado, Ms. Paro Anand.
Thank you. Hi, thank you CFI and Woodstock for having me back again to be with you all. They have asked me to be up on stage, although I really like to be with you guys, but doesn't matter. We'll fill up this space with words. So what's the use of stories at all? And what's the use of stories that aren't even true? Anybody wants to answer that? Yeah. Entertainment, right? For sure, entertainment. Yes, did you have something? Somebody else here? Yep. Knowledge, right? Yep. Very good point. To divert your mind, sometimes you just need to think of something else. Imagination, true. What about, yep. Relief, nice. Yeah. Creative thinking, yep. Yeah, even though they're not real, in ways they connect into our lives. Even Harun and the Sea of Story, with all the magic, realism, and all the weird things that are happening, I felt very strong connections to what's going on in my life, yeah. Morals, yeah. You want a story that is teaching you something of value, is sharing something of value. Doesn't have to be a moral tale, doesn't have to say, and so from this story you learn this. You just absorb it through the words, right? What about trying to, do you know the word empathy? What is empathy? Yeah. When you can feel somebody else's feelings, when you can share their feelings, when you can empathize with what they are going through, that is empathy. So I think stories are a great way of practicing empathy. What about power? Do stories have power? What kind of power? Huh? What kind of power? Influence your thoughts. Maybe there's something you're going through and you don't know what to do about it. You're in it. You're in that very dark space. And a story can open up a tunnel and show you that there's a light at the end of that tunnel. It can also show you that you're not alone in whatever it is that you're going through. You're not totally alone. In the quad, you'll see plenty more fish up on a board with post-its on it. You can get post-its and stick your own. Those are character spiders to start a story. Or you can use those characters and write a story and put that onto the plenty more fish. On the other side, you'll see the Sea of Story painted by the art department. And there are poems up there. There are recipes for different poems, and you can use those recipes and write your own poems and post them there, okay? So that we are all doing more than just reading a book. It's how you read. How many of you have read the book? Wow, that's lots of you. How many of you liked the book? Liked it? How many of you loved it? How many of you didn't like it at all? Okay, very honest. So there are some who didn't read it and didn't like it. How did that happen? You didn't put up your hand when I asked, did you read it? But you put up your hand saying, I didn't like it. Is it because you stopped reading it or what? How did that happen? Tell me. Okay. All right. So I really loved this book. And I think it's one of the best choices for having the whole school read it, because the little kids can read it as a magic book, where weird things happen and funny things happen, and there are all very clever little ideas. But you, the older ones, can read it as a political statement. It's a very political book. It's about how, when there is a dictator, when there is somebody who wants to rule the world according, or rule his country, his city, his community, according to how he believes it should be, like a gorilla, and does not want to hear any counter opinion, and shuts down voices that are against them through arrests, through beatings, through disappearances, and all kinds of ways. The writer Salman Rushdie, when the book first came out and I read it, I thought, wow, and it was a response. Do you know why he wrote Harun and the Sea of Story? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, so just near the steps of Parker Hall, you'll see this list of banned books, and one of Salman Rushdie's books is on that list, on that wall, for a book called The Satanic Verses, where he wrote something, and a group of people, yeah, you wanted to add something? Go ahead. Right. It was a controversial book, certainly. It's anti-Islam in a way. He himself is Islamic. He himself is born a Muslim. So he felt that there were some things that should be written. He wrote it. Did he have the right to write it, do you think? Yeah. No, some are saying no and some are saying yes. Okay. If I think that he shouldn't have written it, what should I do about that? Huh? Don't read it, right? Don't read it. You don't like that book. You don't like the idea of the book. Don't read it. What else can you do? I looked at this book. I've heard about it. Maybe I've read it. I don't agree with it. What can I do? Yeah. Counter it. Exactly. Just counter it. Talk. Speak up. Right? Something you feel a wrong has happened. Speak up about it. Right? With valid points. But what happened instead of the opinions against it? What happened instead? It was banned, yeah. And what happened to him personally? Yeah. Yeah. So there was something called a fatwa. Uh, a fatwa is where you say that anybody who can attack this man and kill him is welcome to do it. We are now, it's like a death sentence on somebody, but anybody can carry out the death sentence, right? Is that right? Is that a fair way of dealing with something that you don't like? Obviously not. And years later, years and years and years later, a young man who had not read the book, right? If you're going to object to something, at least know what you're objecting to. He had not read the book. He was not even born when Satanic Verses was written. But he heard about the fatwa, and what inspired him to jump up on stage and attack Salman Rushdie and take away. What is the attack done to Salman Rushdie, this author, this wonderful, wonderful author, one of the best in the world? It has taken away his eye, and it's taken away a hand. Because he was stabbed, he has lost the use of his writer's hand, and he has lost an eye. And there is no way that that is the correct way of objecting to something you don't agree with. Write a story, speak up, have a voice, but have the courage of your convictions, right? I'm going to read a little bit. I think this is my own opinion of what Salman Rushdie was feeling when he created this book. And look at the character, the storyteller, whose name is Rashid. Salman Rushdie and the storyteller Rashid. So it's almost himself. And what happens to Rashid, as you saw in the play? He's shut up. His mouth is shut. His stories run dry. And stories, the sea of stories, are being poisoned. So I'm going to read to you a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you how this little bit went into a Plenty More Fish, and I caught a thread of it and recreated my own story out of it. There was once in the country of Aleph Bay a sad city, the saddest of cities, a city so ruinously sad that it had forgotten its name. How sad is that you would forget your name? It stood by a mournful sea full of glum fish, which was so miserable to eat because that's what people ate. But when people ate them, it made them burp and belch with sadness. In the north of Sad City, there stood mighty factories in which, so I'm told, sadness was actually manufactured and packaged and sent all over the world, which never seemed to get enough of sadness. Why would the world need sadness? But yet these factories were running 24 hours and belching out smoke of sadness, black and dark and heavy and slimy and greasy and spreading out all over Sad City. In the depths of the city, beyond an old zone of ruined buildings that looked like broken hearts, there lived a happy young fellow by the name of Harun, the only child of the storyteller, Rashid Khalifa, whose cheerfulness was famous throughout the unhappy city, and whose never-ending stream of tall and short and winding tales had earned him 2 nicknames. And I'm going to show you how this thread. Now remember, I read this story a very long time ago when it first came out. So that would be, where is the year of publication? 1991. Okay? And then, in years later, I think I have Plenty More Fish in my head or my gut, I don't know. But I think they are there and at work. In the year 2019, I wrote this, not realizing that I had taken a thread from Harun and the Sea of Story and made a city of my own. And here's the city that I wrote. And I didn't realize I was borrowing, or maybe I did, or maybe it was just the Plenty More Fish. This is a book called Being Gandhi, which was a very tough book to write, but I'll tell you a bit more about why it was tough. My life sucks, just sucks. Preeti ma'am, Preeti miss, she is nice and everything, but you've got to admit she's one of the most boring teachers on earth. It's like a necessary qualification for teachers. In an interview, a potential teacher gets asked, "Are you boring?" No, no, I'm a very interesting person. I have a wonderful sense of humor. Ah, next, reject. I have had some teachers who have been fun, but they're kind of closet fun. They don't let the authorities know. You know, when a class bursts out laughing, what do teachers often do? Shh, 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 so that no one outside knows that there was fun happening in the classroom. But Preeti ma'am, she stands out. She could well be the queen of Boringistan. Now you see, Sad City has become Boringistan, where she rules with deadpan face and monotone voice. I start drawing her and her legendary dry town, where everything has got to be angry and grey and brown, and all clothes are shapeless like mine. Everyone's head droops, shoulders slouch. I start drawing and drawing. I love drawing. I want to be a graphic artist when I grow up. I want to make my own graphic novels. But till then, I've got to suffer school. I pencil in some details of Boringistan's dying trees. So you see, there is Sad City becoming Boringistan. Stories, they say, are not newly invented. There are threads and threads and threads that you catch and ride on and weave those threads into making different colored stories and yarns. So, I wanted also to share with you another book called Wingless, a fairly weird fairy tale. Now, I know some of you feel you're too old for fairy tales. I'm not too old for fairy tales, I can tell you that. And then I'm going to connect again to Harun and the Sea of Story and how these are very similar. A princess is born. When Princess Chutki was born to the king and queen of angels, there should have been much rejoicing and happiness. There should have been music, festivals, feasts, and gifts. There should have been a smile on the face of everyone who lived in the silver and diamond land, where King Quicksilver and Queen Sparkling Gem ruled justly and wisely, just as any good king and queen should in any good fairy tale. But this isn't a good fairy tale, it's a fairly weird fairy tale. So none of these joyful things happen, no. Musical instruments were broken. Blam! Festivals were banned. Feasts that cooks had been preparing for weeks and weeks and weeks were thrown away for dogs and cats and monkeys to feed on. Gifts wrapped and ready for the new princess were hidden away in darkest corners for dust to settle on and spiders to spin their webs on. The smiles on the faces of everyone turned to frowns or even tears. Real, watery, salty tears. Not the tiny diamonds and pearls that angels weep on the few occasions when angels have to weep. And those who wept hardest of all were King Quicksilver and Queen Sparkling Gem. They had so looked forward to their little baby. And here she was at last. And she was perfect. Well, almost. But she wasn't perfect enough. What was wrong with her? Yeah? She was, how did you know? The title of the book. So you're very observant. People who came to see her opened their eyes wide with horror as their jaws fell with loud thuds to the floor. Some were speechless and worried, wordlessly away. Others could only weep and wash the floor with their tears. And there were so many tears that the palace started to flood. And no matter how much the bhaiyas and didis were wiping it up, the whole palace was becoming a swimming pool. Still others had tongues that would not stop wagging. The king and queen must have done something very bad to have had a daughter like this. The kingdom of angels is doomed. The end is in sight. Oh, we must kill this freakish princess before she kills us. She has brought hell to heaven. She must be punished. She must be killed. As the news spread like wildfire, people started to gather at the palace gates. The king and queen, worried for their precious baby, took her up in their arms and carried her up the highest staircase, up the highest tower, to the highest room, and there they put their baby down and locked the door. As the news spread like wildfire, the wagging tongues grew louder and still louder, till all the kingdom was one big shout. Peace was shattered. Even the diamond domes of the palaces came cracking and tumbling down. And all the angels shouted in a fevered and maddening pitch. In one voice they shouted, and I want you all to be those angry angels and shout with me. And what are you going to shout? 3 times, kill her, kill her, kill her, okay? All right? Wait, when I tell you, when I say, and they shouted in one voice, then you do kill her, kill her, kill her. When I do this, you stop. Got it? Okay. And the angels of the land shouted in one voice. That's excellent. Let's try it. Remember, it's one voice. You all have. There's already someone peeping and wondering what's going on. Let's make them really scared. And the angels of the land shouted in one voice. The king's face grew gray with worry. The queen's face grew white with fear. But the shouting wouldn't stop. It became so hot and so angry. We know that anger is a very hot emotion. And imagine all the angels of the land gathered at the palace gates, all in one place, bringing their hot anger with them until the road that they were standing on melted and turned into a silver river. And the angels are still swimming about and splashing about and shouting that the angel baby Chutki must be killed. King Quicksilver just didn't know what to do. I just don't know what to do, he said to the queen, whose face was now as white as a page on which not a word has been written. The queen said in a voice watery with tears, let's ask Nanima. After all, she's 1,003 years old. Perhaps she's seen something like this and knows what to do about it. So Nanima was called. She couldn't hear at all, you see. She was 1,003 years old. So she hadn't heard those wagging tongues and shouting voices. She only saw with amazement all the angels swimming about on a silver river instead of walking on a silver road. Must be some kind of new passion for fashion, she muttered to herself. She had seen passions for fashions come and go, never liked a single one. Not for her, these crazy fashions in buildings and handbags and clothes. She wore the clothes of 1,000 years ago, when women who were women wore sea green seaweed gowns. And these she still wore, keeping them fresh in underwater cupboards. So she looked quite a sight as she splashed through the river of silver until she was shown to the bedroom where King Quicksilver and Queen Sparkling Gem sat sadly on either side of the baby's bed. "Oh!" she cried. "A baby! How wonderful! How delightful! Quick Gem and Sparkling Silver!" She could never ever get their names right. What was the king's name? King Quicksilver. And what is she calling him? King Quick Gem. And what was Queen? Sparkling Silver. What? Quick. I've forgotten. I forgot. King Quicksilver and Queen Sparkling Gem. And she calls them Quick Gem and Sparkling Silver. She can't even remember her own daughter's name. "Why, how wonderful, Quick Gem and Sparkling Silver! You've had a baby! What darlings! How good of you to call me!" She rushed to the baby's bedside and peered in. "Why, how beautiful! How lovely! What a good little baby angel!" But as she lifted the baby up into her arms, she let out a cry of alarm and dropped the baby rudely back into bed. "Oh, oh, oh!" she shrieked in horror. "But what is this? This is little a baby without wings. What is the use of an angel baby without wings?" And her hands were fluttering about, coming to rest here before taking off and coming to rest elsewhere. And here I just have to quickly show you, and this book is in your library. Do have a look at the illustrations. They are by one of India's best illustrators. Isn't that a beautiful... Isn't that a beautiful Nanima? Anyone has a grandmother who looks like that? Like this? Once in a school, there was a child who actually said, "Yeah, that's exactly how my grandmother looks." "What is the meaning of this sparking jet?" "Actually, we wanted to ask you the meaning of this," said the queen in a voice that was loud enough to be rude to anyone but the hard of hearing. But the 1,003-year-old Nanima would not and could not hear. "Why, Quick Slipper and Sprinkling Gent," she shouted in a shaky voice, "I say that you are doomed." Then in a voice now edged in black lace, that is only proper when speaking of bad things, she continued, "You are doomed for having brought hell to heaven. What you have done, Quack, Slicker, and Sprinkling Gent, no one has ever dared to do before. Only sorrow and tears will follow you now. Sorrow and tears." No. And like wind on a moonless night, she swept out of the palace, leaving only the fishy smell of seaweed behind her. Now, where is Harun? What is common in these two books? Yep. Yeah. And here, what's the use of a story if it isn't true? What's the use of an angel if she doesn't have wings? What's the use, right? These are both quest stories, where you go on a quest looking for something. And they are all based in magical lands and in fantasy, but they actually are very much true to how we behave as people. How is that? Because how do we react to somebody who's different from us? How do we try and keep worlds separate? How do we create enemies amongst people who don't need to be enemies? These are common threads processed by those plenty more fish and have come out with two very different and yet very similar stories, right? I'm not going to read more of Wingless because I would love for you to read the book, and of course it's too long, and I want you to look at the pictures. So, do we have any questions? Any questions that you would like to ask about writing, about Harun, about anything? What inspired me to write Wingless? I was actually working with groups of children, and in some of the schools there was a special section, and in the special section there were kids who had disabilities. Special section meaning there were students in the classrooms who had certain disabilities, and while the kids were quite kind, they didn't actually make friends with those kids. They were not part of the class. They sat there, but they weren't part of it. And so one day I asked one of the children, and he was severely disabled, I asked him to come up and talk and address the class. And he said, everybody's very kind to me, but they're almost too kind. It borders on pity, and I don't like that. And the other thing is, they never ask me to play basketball, and I really want to play basketball. I love playing basketball. They never ask me. And he was a kid, nobody thought, because of his disability, that he would want to play basketball. But he was a child. Just as you all want to play different games, he did too. And so we reinvented a version of basketball so that he could play as well. And he was actually a really good member of the basketball team because he had a wheelchair and he could get about very fast. So he was an excellent dribbler with his one good hand. He didn't have another good hand, but one good hand and his wheelchair. So he was a great member of it. And that's when I thought, why did I make angels? Because we assume angels are the good ones. And yet they couldn't accept when there was the baby born without wings. Right? That's the inspiration. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you've had your hand up.
How do you get the name Quicksilver?
Sorry, can you say it again?
How do you get the name Quicksilver, like King Quicksilver? How do you get the name?
How do I get the names? You know, it's a strange thing about names because the names often just suddenly come. In this book called I'm Not Butter Chicken, You Can't Order Me, this book, there's one story, and the name just came to me, and I didn't know where it came from. I'd never heard the name before. I've never heard the name since. And the name of the main protagonist in that story is called Nalya. I'd never heard the name Nalya. Navya, yes. Nalya, no. But that was the name that came. So sometimes it just comes. Sometimes I struggle to find an appropriate name. Yeah.
So like the story, do you like the from like the book Wingless? Did you like first storyboard the story, or like did you make a lot of images, or just like?
Did I make a lot of changes?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes, especially in the ending. You know, there's a shift in the book. It starts out all very funny and everything, and then it becomes a bit serious, it becomes a bit dark. So I found that there was a lack of balance between the two parts of the book. And actually, I didn't notice it, the illustrator noticed it. Because when he was doing the drawings, there were first these very light-hearted drawings, and then they were all very dark. And he says, we need some balance, and so I did some rewriting of it. And certainly rewriting this book, No Guns at My Son's Funeral, this one is, I knew, I got the title first, that came to me whole, and I knew what was going to happen in the end. But it took me 5 years to get there, and I rewrote the book 7 times before I was ready with it. Yes, who has the mic? Go ahead.
What is it like being an author?
I think to me, it's the best job in the world because I can be whoever I want to be. I can live so many lives. As an author, you live so many lives in so many different places. I can go backwards into the past. I can go forwards into the future. I can become a really poor person struggling. I can become a man or anything. And so imagine that. Imagine a job where you can do all of that. I can be a bird. I can be anything. Yes, yeah. Have I searched for a name for my book? On Google? No. No. No, I haven't. We were talking about, how much should we depend on artificial intelligence? See, I'm in my 60s. I'm not in that, my intelligence is waning already. So, so no, I haven't been to Google to look for I have researched online for some of it. This book, Nomad's Land, I actually knew I wanted to write about I wanted to write the Kashmiri Pandit story, who are people who were driven out of their land, nomads' land. Nomads are people who don't have land. And then here I'm talking about nomads' land. Where do nomads belong? But I wanted the story from 2 different perspectives. I wanted 2 characters. And I had a particular idea in mind, but I couldn't find a single tribe, a single displaced people who fitted exactly what I needed. And so I made up a people. And I love what Salman Rushdie says, that, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Make it exist. Make it up in your head. So I made up a tribe of people called the Kushavans, who come from the Kushaha plateau up in the Himalayas. And I made up their customs, their clothes, their food, their language. And it was a very exciting process. That's the first time I've ever done that. So why did I start on that? I forgot. But yeah.
Which is one book that you have written and you have really enjoyed writing it?
Wow. I've loved every single one of my books. Being Gandhi, I was going to talk about Being Gandhi. When I was asked, because it was Mahatma Gandhi's 150 years, so everybody wanted to publish something on Gandhi. So the editor asked me from HarperCollins, can you write a book on Gandhi? And my first answer was no. Because I said, what more is to say about Gandhi? What more should children know? And we have made him into a god. We've put him up on a high pedestal. Kids can't reach him anymore. And then that's where I found my answer. Let's make Gandhi so accessible that each one of us, can be Gandhi. Therefore, the book is called Being Gandhi. When I finished writing the book, I was crying, and my daughter-in-law came in. I was in their house, in my daughter-in-law's house, and she came in and she said, "What happened?" And I said, "I think I've just written a really good book." And it's the first time I felt that sense of great satisfaction, because I started off thinking I would not be able to write this book. And then I wrote it. Yeah. So who has the mic? Yep, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah.
Hi.
I have two questions. What was the first book you wrote, and what was the latest book you wrote?
Okay. First book I wrote is one called Pepper the Capuchin Monkey and Other Stories. And it was in class 7, a bit younger than you all, that our teacher was asking the class what pet animals we had. And I had a really boring pet animal who was a very old dog who was more like a carpet than a dog. He was like this rug. So he was good for putting your feet on in winter, warming your feet when you were cold, hugging him at night, and he was a warm blanket. But that's about all he would do. When I stood up, and all eyes, like they are right now, were turned on me, instead of old dog, what came out of my mouth was monkey. And then the teacher called me in front to tell everyone more about the monkey, and there were questions shooting at me, and no problem, I was giving answers like that, as though it was a real monkey. And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, Paro, you're really good at this. If you can't do anything else, you can be a writer. So that was my first book, Pepper the Capuchin Monkey, which I wrote years later. My latest one is Nomad's Land. Where did you go? Okay, Nomad's Land is the latest one. And also Unmasked. Now, where is Unmasked? If I put them on two different chairs, then how will I find them? Unmasked are stories, 19 stories of the pandemic. But there's a surprise in this book. The first story, because I thought I would call it COVID's 19 and write 19 stories around COVID, about how we all had this common enemy. And so it started out when a young girl, 13-year-old girl who was in an online workshop with me, wrote, and I'm going to read a little bit of that poem. Sorry, I'm going to just read a little bit, because, during the pandemic, a lot of people from the cities had to walk miles and miles and miles to get back to their villages, because all trains, all buses had stopped. And they had no money to live in the city, and there was no work left because they were not allowed in. And so they started to walk, and many of them died while walking, simply from tiredness, from hunger, from thirst. There they were, walking in groups, thinking nothing. For if you are stranded, unknown city, unkind people, no food, ask yourself, what would you do? You'll simply pick up your bags like them, rest in rags like them, pick up food scraps like them, do menial work like them. For if you are stranded, unknown city, unkind people, no food, no shelter, ask yourself, what would you do? This is written by a 13-year-old girl, Jia Pardal. And then for the 19th story, this is the surprise, I thought, since everybody has been through COVID, no matter where in the world you've been, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're educated, whether you're not, everybody went through COVID. So the 19th story is blank. It's for you to write your story. You can add in pages. You write your story in a poem, in a story form, and that will be your COVID story. so that each copy of this book will be unique. Yes, questions? Whoever has the mic. Yeah.
How and when did you realize that you wanted to be a writer? Like, what was the moment that it clicked, like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do, and you started planning out how you were going to do it?
I was a drama teacher first. And I found there were no play scripts that I wanted to, that the kids wanted to do, my students, or I wanted to do. They either came from the West, or they came, or if they were Indian, they would be the ancient mythology, folk stories and things. There was nothing contemporary for young people. And so I thought, I'm going to write play scripts. And I started to write that. That's when I discovered there were no books for kids either of prose, and that's how I went into writing. Yep. Oh, sorry, you didn't have the mic, can you? It doesn't matter. If you can speak loud enough, do it. Yeah, speak loud. I am writing 3 books. I'm a weird writer. I write usually two books at the same time. This time I'm trying to write 3. And actually, Woodstock, I've discovered, is really good for me as a writer, because I was given a writer in residency some years ago, and in 3 weeks I wrote the first draft of this book, which was my first novel for adults. It's called Pure Sequence, and I wrote it in 3 weeks, never done that before. And right here, in between my classes with you all, I am writing. This morning I've written a whole chunk.
You hear me?
Yes, who has the mic?
Yeah. So when you were writing your first book, like, how did you feel? Like, did you feel like nervous or like excited that you're becoming like you're in the first step of becoming an author, or like were you, like I said, nervous, like it might not do that good, you might not be that much, or were you like, what were your feelings?
You know, that nervousness I certainly felt the first time I was writing, and I feel it every time. I think I've written about 36 books now. I think I've lost count a bit, but I think 36 or 37 books. I have that nervousness every time, because I'm so deeply in the book. It's hard for me to judge whether it's really good or really rubbish. I don't know how to judge it. Except being Gandhi, where I said, I know I've written a good book. Yes, Mike, who has the mic? Yes, here.
Ma'am?
Here.
You mentioned in today's session and the one on Monday that you tend to write like 2 books at the same time to like help you like with the writer's block. So like what happens when you like sort of run out of ideas? Like what do you do?
What do I do? I've actually never experienced the writer's block till about 6 months ago. And I've been kind of blocked, and it's terrible for me. I mean, people ask me, do you like to write? And my answer is always, and it's true, it's not just a clever answer. It's like asking somebody, do you like to breathe? I mean, you don't think about it, you just need to do it, because if you don't do it, you're going to die. And I feel like that about writing. So a writer's block is a terrifying thing for me. It's my lifeblood. So being blocked recently, so I did then what I could do was to start writing other stuff, articles and things, so just so that I could keep showing up to work, you know. Yes, Mike?
So ma'am, who was your favorite writer and what was his favorite book?
Who is my favorite writer? I have lots of favorite writers. I love reading, so I will read anything. I loved the Harry Potter series. I loved them. I can't say which is my... Yes. And you know why I, as a children's writer, really loved it? Because when the book came out, when the first book was written and handed over to, was being shown to publishers, J.K. Rowling was rejected by 7 publishers. And then Bloomsbury, also there was what was called a slush pile, where people, don't really take those books seriously. And there was a marketing person sitting at the table and had nothing to do at that moment, thought, oh, okay, let me just go through the slush pile. And started reading this book. 6, 7 pages in, called one of the editors and said, hey, I think this is something special, come and sit down. By the end of that day, there were 7 of them, and they were passing the pages one by one to each other and reading it. And they thought, wow, this is something phenomenal. And it was a marketing person. Why was she rejected by 7 publishers? And I'm so glad they must be whipping themselves. And I hope that the editors who rejected them have lost their jobs forever because they couldn't see the potential. They were rejected because, J.K. Rowling was rejected because, listen to this, why was she rejected? The paragraphs are too long, the plot is too complicated, the words are very difficult, parts of the later books are too dark, and children won't understand these books. Any of it true? No. No. So I'm so glad that she proved them wrong. And do you know that even Bloomsbury, the marketing people, she had submitted it as Joanne K. Rowling, and she was asked to change her name to J.K. Rowling because it was said that boys won't read a book written by a woman. True? No, I don't think so. Yeah, so my end sentence to you is, prove the grown-ups wrong all the time. My message to you. Thank you. No. Oh. So if you'd like, if you have more questions, I'll be right here. I'm very happy to answer them. I have a present. Thank you. Thank you.